maybe as we're waiting to get started, do you guys want to say your favorite thing that you've seen so far in Bonn?
Introduce themselves.
And introduce yourself, your name.
I'm Ian, and the favorite thing is probably all the pavilions. They're really cool, how they're set up.
Cheryl Polasek, and I'm part of the delegation for philanthropy, and I've gotten a good chance to look at lots of NGOs that are doing amazing things. And of course, they all need funding from various sources.
I'm Espoir, and my favorite thing, it's really cool just being in the negotiations and thinking about all the places that people come from. To me, that's really cool, people watching. And we saw a really cute dog on the subway on the way back to the hotel.
Nice.
I mean, everything's great, but just those kinds of things.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, I guess we can get started here since we're about 2 minutes in. So I just want to remind everybody to speak up because I think just microphone-wise, since you guys are sitting a little bit farther from the computer, it'd be helpful if you spoke louder. But otherwise, we can get started. So for all attendees, welcome to Window into COP23 live from Bonn, Germany. Thanks for joining to get an inside look at this awesome historic event. So my name is Lauren Baritsky, and I'm the communications coordinator here at Climate Generation, or Will Steger Legacy, which is a nonprofit in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So our mission is to empower individuals and their communities to engage in solutions to climate change. So we work with youth, educators, the public, and influentials to engage with climate literacy and action on a community level. So Climate Generation has actually led delegations to COP since 2009 with Copenhagen and COP15. So we actually sent a delegation of Midwest youth to engage in the international negotiations. And then the next really big COP that we had sent delegations to was COP21 in 2015, when we sent a delegation of 10 teachers from across the country because we recognize that educators are critical messengers of climate and energy literacy to hundreds of students each year. So these 10 teachers, which you can see on the right of this awesome PowerPoint, attended COP21 as both learners and climate change communicators to their classrooms back home. So this year for COP23, we are super excited to send a multi-delegation or multi-sector delegation, a few of which are in this photograph here on the screen, to Bonn. So we recognize that it takes all sectors to address climate change, and all voices must be represented at the table. So our delegates this year represent education, law, philanthropy, youth, elected officials, and Indigenous communities, showing the world that the United States, as well as Minnesota, is still in the Paris Agreement. So our delegation actually joins other Minnesotans in the greater U.S. People's Delegation, which I'm sure our delegates today can talk a little bit about what that means. So this includes national or non-governmental organizations and elected officials from across the country. So today, for our first webinar, we are excited to hear from Cheryl Polasek, who is the director of the Polasek Family Foundation, which the foundation's mission is to improve community through support of the arts, education, the environment, and the underserved. We're also hearing from Ian Empson, who is a high school junior from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he has a strong interest in biology, earth sciences, and winter sports. And then we are also hearing from Espoir, who is a freshman at Dickinson College, planning on majoring in environmental science. So if you have any questions during today's webinar, please feel free to type them in the chat box, and we will try to answer them as we go. So I will pass it over to our delegates.
Sweet. Should we do screen share?
Sure.
We're gonna get started with a couple pictures just as a way to help you all kind of travel in your minds here to Bonn. The weather has been rainy, a little cold, but we're mostly not really outside that much, so it's fine. You have to bring up the so like make it.
Okay. But it's already like on the page.
Are you?
Are you guys trying to share the screen?
Desktop. Yeah.
Okay, if you hover your mouse over the bottom, it should have that. There we go. All right, we see it. Awesome.
So this we took last night after dinner. It's just all the delegation that's here.
Week 1.
We went to a super nice pizza restaurant, and this was in front of the church where the action on Saturday was. That I was at, and it was really cool. They reported 2,500 people were there. There were lots of signs, and just it was great energy, kind of going into the COP.
I think I have a photo.
Yeah, and there's some pictures too. Yeah, this is I met some people from the German Protect Our Winters group, which is a nonprofit that works with ski and snowboard professional skiers and snowboarders to take a stand against climate change. And Ian actually knows POW also, so that was really cool to connect with them, and I was really excited to see them there. There's tons of people, lots of different organizations, but also just independent people there with their really cool signs. There's some other signs, I think. Yeah, this is a view. There was a really big group from 350 and different kind of groups in Germany, but it was really awesome.
And we arrived a bit late, Ian and I, for the march, but we, over dinner, saw stragglers going by with red is the new green signs, which is to keep coal in the ground. And oil in the ground.
And
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think yesterday morning, I don't know where a photo of it is, but yeah, I think it's this one. Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We when you're getting off the subway, there was just like a huge protest going on, and it was in German, so I didn't really understand, but it was so cool. There's a lot of good vibes.
And it was a lot of kids, Greenpeace, Kids for Greenpeace, and they had a big polar bear, not a real one, but someone dressed, probably at least 2 people dressed up as a giant polar bear that the kids were having a good time.
That's so cool.
So there's a lot of things going on around Bonn, which it doesn't seem a huge city, but it's a really beautiful city. And they have lots of public transportation. Their train and subway and bus is, once you have it down, is pretty easy and very efficient.
There are signs in the stations where the Bula and Bonn zones are that point like COP23 this way. That's super helpful.
This is just kind of a cool photo of right when you get to the UN campus grounds, there's this big building and all these signs on it. I don't know.
Yeah. It looks like it might be the Deutsche Welle, a German news source building, if that's the logo.
So the first day we got situated, getting our badges and going through you have to go through lots of security every time you go in and out. So this is the entrance to where all the exhibitions are.
Security is not bad though. It's pretty efficient.
Yeah.
The lines, they're better than at the airport.
Once you get used to it, you can just zoom through them. They don't care if you have liquids in your water bottles, but they always make you drink a sip in front of them, which I think is the funniest thing. I always have coffee or something, and they're like, is this a water bottle? I'm like, yes. And they're like, what's in it? And I'm like, coffee. And they're like, have a sip. And I'm like, okay. It's really funny. But they're really nice, and there's so many volunteers. They all have these swanky COP23 jackets and shirts and stuff, but it's really obvious that like the entire international community has really kind of shown up to bond to support this event, because I've heard that a lot of the volunteers actually aren't even from this area.
Yeah, I met like a Colombian today. He like, I was getting coffee and he was just like, take it, it's free, because he was like, I know it's hard being a student.
Oh, that's so nice. That's
This
awesome.
morning I posted, we met 3 volunteers. They were from Cameroon, Ghana, and Italy.
Wow.
And one of them came back after getting the little bookmark on Climate Gen and noticing I was philanthropy. And he has a foundation in Cameroon to plant trees, and he works specifically with people that are blind, which he said they're very discriminated against in Cameroon. And they're not, he said there's no reason they should be. So he's looking for funding, like lots of places doing really amazing work.
Yeah.
But one thing I'm taking away from this week is that up for the last 25 years, there's been such a focus on all the science behind climate change and what's causing it and why, but not looking at what it's doing to people. And today I heard he was a 3-term president for some little islands called Irrawaddy in between Australia and Papua New Guinea. And Kiribati, sorry. And he said he's up for years have been pushing. It's a social people issue because of all the things that actually the UN addresses, which is poverty and food security and things like their island is going to be underwater for sure by 2100. And he said they even have climate deniers because no one wants to be told you're going to have nowhere to live anymore. But he keeps pushing that you have to focus on the next generation. Yes, you may not see it in your lifetime that their islands are underwater, but they're certainly seeing the extreme weather that's impacting a lot of them. So there's a lot more focus, it seems, on health and all these things. Climate change is creating results that everyone feels.
Mm-hmm.
Espoir, can you maybe talk a little bit about your experience at COI and what that looks like from your like pre-COP23 journey into the conference?
Sure, yeah, that's a good idea.
This is a church, by the way. It's lit up for COP. It's not usually lit up.
Mm-hmm. So I got to Germany I left Pennsylvania a week ago today, and I arrived a week from tomorrow, and I was attending the Conference of Youth, which is a youth space that the UN kind of facilitates to, from what I understood, it's kind of a space for youth to connect, but also the output that comes out of it is a document that the COI, the Conference of Youth, passes on to the COP. And through that document, it's an easy space for youth to make demands. So I was part of helping to write that demand paper, or the kind of COI final output document is what they called it. And actually tomorrow, because it's Young and Future Generations Day at the COP, they will be presenting that document to the COP plenary, I believe. So that's really exciting. It was also really interesting because the COI brings people, there are over 1,000 youth from 114 different countries, and it's a workshop space. And so lots of the workshops are different youth kind of explaining initiatives they are a part of at home. And then some of the workshops are thinking about like greater like root issues that affect climate change and different other social issues and like root causes and kind of different strategies you can take to that. And then there's also the Young Go working group. So Young Go is the youth constituency, one of the 9 constituencies that makes up the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Definitely something I think we've all been getting used to while we've been here is just the acronyms language. And sometimes it really feels like a lot of the negotiations or even just trying to have conversations with people across different levels of experience within kind of the COP framework is the acronyms. And if you can understand what people are saying, or if you remember what CMA and CMP and the difference between everything is. So to me, that's really interesting to kind of think about accessibility and how accessible this COP space is. But at the COI, it was just really awesome to meet tons of international youth. And I'm just really thankful that I got to be there, because now, like, in the hallways of COP, if I'll see a familiar face, and even just seeing someone that I know or being able to say hi to someone is really special, because sometimes I think it's easy to kind of get lost in all the people in COP and all the things happening all the time. So it's been really special. Not necessarily everyone who comes to the COI stays for the COP, but some people do. So that's been really cool to kind of stay connected with them and start to try to become part of the Young Go working groups, and all the actions and everything. Tomorrow is going to be a really big day for youth at the COP, hopefully. And hopefully you all will hear about it, because we'll get tons of press coverage. That's the hope. And it's really interesting to kind of think about how youth can have a role here, because, all the youth here, I think, have different roles. So it's interesting to see how some of them get to be, like, a girl that I met at the COI was the negotiator in one of the plenaries for Sudan today. Like, I knew her, and she was talking, and I was like, wait, I know this person. And that's really cool. And she's like a youth under 30 and was at the COI. And then other people like Ian and I are like here, and we're not the negotiators for the US or anything, but we're still very much here and very much like soaking it in, just kind of, I think, coming out of it in a different way. I don't know. What's your perspective on that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, like, I've seen a lot of kids, not really any as young as me, but like I've just like learned so much that I like had no idea. Like there's so much. Yeah, there's so much that I just like realized I had no idea, I knew nothing about, and like I'm really taking in just like how much there is to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you guys have, on top of the Youth and Young Generations Day tomorrow, do you guys have specific plans or sessions that you really want to go to?
At least I know there's lots of different actions going on, and there's going to be a Youth and Future Generations like opening ceremony. So I think that'll be really interesting, and then like a press conference and things like that. But today was like Farmers Day, and I didn't really see or hear that much about the role of farmers. I think like the themes of the day can be really present, and there definitely are like panels that are going to be about that, kind of no matter what theme it is. But it's interesting to try to see the UN like focalizing on different issues and different populations on certain days, and like how that works and why.
And yesterday was Indigenous Day, which was much more visual, and that's the president of Fiji, who's Prime Minister of Fiji, with the purple tie, and he's the COP president. And Fiji it's the first time they've had an island country. It was too small to hold COP, so Germany's the host country, but Fiji's in charge of everything. And it's really brought, I think, a lot more on Indigenous, and also how these small island countries are really in dire straits. And Ian, maybe you want to talk about the people from the Amazon we heard yesterday, which was quite amazing.
Yeah, so this is like the president of a like small tribe in Ecuador, and they're called like the Sarayaku. And essentially, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, the government of Ecuador sold their land to an oil company in Argentina, and they started to like drill it up, but these people took it to court and they got nothing out of it. So they took it to an international court where they won the case, and Ecuador was forced to like take back all that they had, or give back all that they had taken. But not surprisingly, that didn't happen. And then now they're trying to sell the land again to an oil company in China, and they don't really know what's going to happen. Yeah.
In this Argentinian company, one of the things they were supposed to pay punitive damages, which they've never received, and also they have left all these explosives in the jungle, and it's the most pristine area of the entire Amazon. There is nothing there, and there's no, with oil prices low, and it just doesn't make any sense to start digging up the Amazon. And when we know the Amazon is key to taking in carbon, and they don't want their land to be like a museum. They live on the land. They believe they're part of the land, and they've lived there for thousands of years in perfect ecosystem, and now they've got this government that's not treating them very well. But they're fighting it with the help of some nonprofits. And so another area where always philanthropy is needed is to help fund some of these nonprofits that have attorneys that work for like indigenous tribes. And so there's a really big presence of indigenous.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are like walking around in their native like clothing, which is really cool.
They're only, somebody today quoted, indigenous peoples are only 4% of the world population, but they're 70% more likely to be affected by climate change than other, and they're the least likely to have ever contributed to it.
Yeah, a big part of like a big new thing that's coming up is the CBDR. I think there's 2 more letters. So it's common but differentiated responsibility, and I think that's like one of the biggest UNFCCC like policy statements that like even just sitting in, I was in one of the plenary sessions today, and they talked for like 20 minutes about one word. So like even just coming up with that phrase, common but differentiated responsibilities, is like really powerful, I think, and is kind of starting to realize and acknowledge within the official UNFCCC space that most of the indigenous people are the ones feeling it the most and not contributing to it. And so that's like, of course, everyone has this responsibility, but there are certain people who have affected it more than others, and so that's really important, I think.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting to have all our phones pop up that Syria
Oh my gosh,
signed.
yeah.
So the United States is now the only country in the world that is not participating.
Because Nicaragua joined last month, I think it was.
Yeah.
Which it was cool because there's only 2 delegates from Syria, and I actually saw one yesterday, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So there is a lot of talk about the U.S. It's a bit of an odd feeling that the U.S. is, when did you say, somewhat being dismissed as having to put up with this for at least the next 4 years, but everyone else they're just going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think even just in talking with some of the other like youth that are here, a lot of them are really surprised when I talk about the things that Climate Gen does and the ways that all of the delegation is part of that. Like, it's interesting to see how much our government really, like, internationally propagates what they think or how they want to represent the U.S. and like how much of that is accepted by the international community, and really how that affects how we as people from the US are seen, I think, at COP, and how people envision our role also.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the U.S. People's Delegation and kind of what it means for you guys to be there, and what maybe all the different orgs, you know, what's the role look like as you guys are kind of navigating representing the U.S. but not exactly representing the U.S. at the same time?
Totally.
I think there's a huge delegation of NGOs who are saying we're still in, we're not changing our mission, we're going to move forward, you know, with these goals, whether our government is in or not. And it doesn't represent what the current administration says. It's not what the majority of Americans feel. And during Ellen's press conference yesterday, that was pretty clear by everyone on it, that they wanted to say that they were not representing they were representing the majority of how people feel that we want to address this issue.
Yeah, from what I know about the U.S. People's Delegation, it's kind of 350 that is becoming this umbrella over all the NGOs, like how you were talking about, that are part of it, and really just kind of highlighting the fact that these are the U.S. people, and this is what the real U.S. looks like, and what civil society in the U.S. looks like. And at the press conference, it was really special because everyone that was on the panel from the U.S. People's Delegation was either Indigenous, youth, like women, or like all of those things. So I think it was really powerful, at least for me, to see our country represented in that way that really does reflect who we are as the U.S. and what like the real U.S. population is, and who is feeling the effects of climate change, but also the people that are generally not included in the kind of political or more official U.S. And to have that, for us to be representing those communities, is really powerful, I think, especially in a space like COP23, that's so powerful that we're kind of trying to shift that power and shift the paradigm. Sustain Us. So I saw there's a question about Climate Action Network and Sustain Us. So Sustain Us folks were part of the press conference on Tuesday, and they're doing lots of really cool stuff. I've been kind of trying to connect with some of them. I got to meet some of them at COI, so that was really special. And Climate Action Network is really cool. Have y'all connected with Climate Action Network that much?
I went to the opening, and
okay, cool.
We both went to that. And I guess I haven't as much as tomorrow when they call it the people's the pavilion opens, there'll be a lot more going on.
Yeah.
There's also a giant globe we haven't been in with. Maybe you can show a picture.
I don't know if I have one, but
I thought I airdropped.
Can you guys explain what you're saying about the People's Pavilion and how it's not open yet?
Yeah, we're not sure why it's not open, but I think they built it. Bloomberg is funding it all, and I think it seems like it was maybe a later ad, so you went over.
Yeah, I like walked down and I tried to get in, but there was like someone standing outside, and he was just like, "No, you can't get in." And I like looked in one of the windows, and it was just like empty space and nothing was set up. So
interesting. Yeah,
so they must have been working all last night and all today to have it ready, because they have a big thing at 4 tomorrow.
Yeah, so tomorrow as part of the U.S. People's Delegation, there's going to be a Speak Out event. So I think it's going to be kind of an opportunity for folks from the U.S. People's Delegation to really send a direct action and send demands to the official U.S. delegation, which is coming next week with some very interesting characters as part of it, and kind of to explain the pavilions in the bond zone. Always getting them confused. There's different pavilions for different constituencies as well as different countries. So, like, what all are the countries that have pavilions?
It's like
France, Germany. Sorry, what were you
yeah,
gonna say?
the Nordic countries,
it's
Russia,
a lot of Asian countries too.
Yeah,
Indonesia.
Indonesia has a big
Yeah,
pavilion.
so does India.
UK.
Germany. The EU has a pavilion.
India has a big one, and they offer yoga.
Yeah.
which is funny.
The pavilions are kind of an interesting space, at least like the way that I see it. It's definitely, tell me if that's wrong, but the way that like different countries can kind of present their stance and their presence and their cultural values maybe, or like kind of who they are as a country at COP, that's more than just their negotiators or whichever word they're really pushing for to be used in a certain bit of legislation or something like that. And a lot of them sometimes have free food.
Yeah,
so like at the German pavilion, there's free coffee. The France pavilion, I think, has like, I don't know if it's free, but there's like a little cafe.
Yeah, in the English one, there was like little free desserts.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to go there tomorrow.
And then like Indonesia, they were all like dressed up in their like traditional clothing yesterday.
Yeah. So
and then there's a big area called the Telenoa, which is storytelling, and that's where like the indigenous, like the ones we heard talking about the Amazon, and it's this beautiful space of all these flowers, and
it's very green.
And so that's I think part of Fiji, where they tell stories, and that's how you get people to understand. So that's what that area. Interesting speakers.
Yeah, Talanoa, at least like what you said, is like a cultural practice from Fiji that focuses on listening and solidarity and kind of being in the same place and the same level, no matter where you come from, what issues you're facing. And it's interesting because today also they had the first open dialogue session, which is like a UNFCCC session with people from more than just the countries and more than just the 9 different delegations. And so many people that spoke, like from the women's and gender constituencies and other constituencies, began like every statement they made by saying like, we've never been given this kind of space in a negotiation, and that's been more than 1 minute. That's not been the minute where everybody's trying to get up and leave at the end or like things like that. So it's interesting to see how Talanoa and like Fijian cultural values are trying to kind of trickle down into the deep inner workings of the UN that are so formal, at least to me, and very already set in stone just because of the history that comes with them. We have another question.
I've been watching some of the sessions online, and it seems that the way the U.S. is discussed is quite diplomatic and respectful, which I don't believe is how people actually feel. What is more of the feeling?
I mean, like in a lot of like panels and discussions, they kind of like try and avoid talking about the U.S. And if they do, it's kind of more just like a side thing. Like we're gonna ignore what they do, and I don't know. It's kind of like not a big topic that I've seen.
Yeah, and I'm guessing at the negotiations they would be respectful, but they're more. I think they kind of more feels like we're being just discounted at these non-negotiating panels. They just don't. I think just don't have respect or something. I mean, that's what I would say. It feels like someone who doesn't respect you. But they wouldn't do it to, I mean, they're pleasant to us as individuals, but I think they're all a little perplexed.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I would definitely
I mean,
agree with that.
Don't you think people are nice to us? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
like I don't feel like we're being
judging us
discriminated against.
No, as individuals.
Yeah.
But just I think there's a feeling we're one of the biggest polluters and have been for a long time, and we need to be accountable.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's lots of interesting ideas of how to like skip over, you know, bring solar and right to villages instead of, you know, just go clean right from the beginning. Similar to like China skipped over landlines for the most part and went right to cellular. Why put in that infrastructure when there's better technology?
Yeah, like something I heard today was like in this small like industrial town in Denmark, it was like known for being pretty like not really caring about the environment that much, but what they did is they hired like huge, it was like over 200, maybe like 250 in a town of 2,000 to like help build a solar or a wind farm, and like everyone was like happy because they're still being like hired to like maintain and like manage it while they're getting like clean energy, and but they don't have to like, even though it wasn't really what they like agreed with or like thought, I don't know how to say it, but
they thought they maybe didn't think it was a good idea.
Yeah,
right,
but like in the end they were getting money from it, so I mean,
yeah,
can't complain about that.
for sure.
Well, I'm wondering if any of the other attendees have questions, because I think we're kind of hitting our time cap here. So having the last couple of questions as well as closing statements from you three, maybe just highlighting what you hope to do with the rest of your time in Bonn. Yeah, so I'm not seeing any questions come in, so maybe just closing statements.
I just wanted to quick talk about Climate Action Network. Just that first question from Beth. So Climate Action Network is so big and like has such a huge international presence. It's crazy. This morning I handed out the eco newsletter that they make every day that has articles about like what's been happening in the negotiations. And it's really cool because there's such a community, I think, within CAN that I don't necessarily really feel like I'm a part of yet, but it's really obvious that there's a lot of people that have worked together for a long time in these UN negotiations. And something really fun that they do every day, you can stream it online. It's called the Fossil of the Day. And they nominate like countries or like actions that have happened in the day of the negotiations that like reflect people doing their best to be the worst and doing the most to do the least for the environment. And it's super funny, and I think to me it just kind of really exemplifies the role that CAN has, and like the way that they've really been able to create a unique voice and perspective for themselves and role within these like generally serious, formal suit and tie like type situations where they can really, and I mean like people listen to the Fossil of the Day and it's streamed on Facebook, and like I've heard from different CAN folks that if people get like if countries get picked for Fossil of the Day, they're upset and they know and people know and it means something. But it's cool because it's this totally different kind of way of looking at movement and looking at like what's happening and kind of presenting it. So highly recommend streaming that. You can stream it, I think, on their Facebook page. And there's a little song and people dress up and it's super, super funny. So highly, highly recommend that. Sorry, I saw another.
There's one more. Can you see all
A
those?
couple more questions.
Can everyone see the questions?
Thank you so much, Beth, for all the questions. We really appreciate it.
Oh, we are hanging out with the U of M grad students
Yeah, we got dinner with them
Uh-huh.
last night.
Yeah, Jordan, Jacob, and Andrew.
Yeah, they're great. It's really fun to meet other folks kind of coming from similar places to this international space. The Chinese Youth Climate Action Network seems really cool. We'll definitely have to connect with them.
Yeah, China has
Thank you for the
big,
recommendation.
a big space.
Yeah.
They have a lot of delegates.
They
too.
have, our
They do have a
hotel
lot.
has a lot of Chinese and Japanese delegates.
Interesting.
So we are missing the U.S. not having a pavilion.
Yeah, so that's kind of what the Climate Action, U.S. Climate,
Right.
what is it called officially? U.S. Climate Action Space
Or
is kind of
something.
acting as a like impromptu pavilion because, so as you said
Right.
earlier, Bloomberg funded it, but because it's not, I'm assuming that maybe because it's not like from officially the U.S. government, it's not inside the zone. But I think it's actually better because people who aren't part of the negotiations or who don't have the badge can go to it. So I think that's cool because it makes it a lot more accessible for anyone else who maybe is curious about the U.S. stance and makes it a little more, at least I think because of that, it makes it more inclusive than some even of the negotiations themselves.
So we also got a question from Jason, who's here at Climate Generation. He says, any message you want to send to Yamen high schoolers at the meeting tonight? So for those who don't know, Yamen is Climate Generation's youth program.
I don't have any specific messages. Keep up the great work. Definitely, like, come to a COP if you want to. Stream some stuff online. It's really interesting to see kind of the other, I don't know if half is the right word, but another side of the climate movement and like what that looks like, and kind of at least something I feel like I've been thinking a lot about. I don't know about you guys, of just like thinking about what role this space has in the climate movement and if and or how what happens here matters. So I think that's a cool thing to think about, at least because all the stuff I learned about beforehand about the UN is like all these countries trying to change the world, but when you're really in the rooms, it doesn't necessarily feel like that. So definitely challenge that perspective and dig around a little.
And also check out We're Still In if you're not, haven't done it yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Cheryl and Ian, do you guys have any closing statements before we kind of close up here today?
I'm actually excited about the next 2 days. There seems to be a lot more happening. Even today was a lot busier, or a lot. The first 2 days were more setting statements, and so I've got my calendar booked up with things, which I don't have in front of me, so don't ask what it is.
Yeah, I'm just excited for the next couple of days because it seems like each day it gets busier and busier. So, and I'm excited to like see the U.S. space, climate action space.
Yeah.
Which will send pictures.
Yes, for sure. And there may or may not be a streaming through the U.S. People's Delegation or some kind of video potentially. So keep an eye out for that.
Definitely. All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. We're going to close with just a couple more details on how people can follow you. So if you guys aren't following our daily digest yet, you can head to climategen.org/COP23 to sign up for email updates. You can also follow our delegates on Twitter and Instagram through our own channel. We've kind of been reposting their content, so that's at climategen.org. And you can participate with the global conversation with #MNCOP23 and #COP23. If you love this webinar and can't wait for more, definitely save the date for our post-COP23 panel, which will feature some of our delegates as well as other delegates from Minnesota. And that will be on Monday, November 27th from 12 to 1 p.m. So it will be in St. Paul at the Institute on the Environment. But if you can't make it in person, it will be live webcasted out, which the link is there. But if you subscribe to our daily digests, you will receive that in your email immediately. But yeah, thanks guys so much for tuning in and kind of giving us the scoop on what it's like in Bonn. And
Thank you, Climate Generation, for getting us here.
absolutely,
We
yes.
need to shout out.
Awesome. All right. Well, we look forward to reading the rest of your blogs for the week, and we wish you the best as you.
We take it very seriously. We've got it down to 5 to 6 or 6 to 7. We sit and do it. All do it together.
That's so great. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.